we didn't get the grant for half and half.
Good afternoon, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us here in the room and for those people who are joining us online for the presentation by the implementation team for scaling up 7-week classes. Before we begin the presentation, I want to just have the implementation team quickly introduce themselves and their roles so that you know who you're hearing from, and we can dispense from that part as we're moving from person to person. Could I start with you?
Winter Harrington, Assistant Dean of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences.
Good afternoon, Bill Stargard, Dean of Arts, Humanities, and Social Science.
Hello, everyone in the room and online. Roger Hart, Physics and Engineering.
Hi, everyone. My name is Bill Sesto, the Assistant Dean of Business and STEM.
Rebecca Heimel, Dean of Academic Affairs.
Good afternoon, Amy Kastorek, Associate Vice President for Student Affairs.
Hi, Kelly Morrissey, Dean of Financial Assistance and Scholarships.
Good afternoon, Kathy Tessier, Director of Records.
Tanika Alexander, Manager of Impact Initiatives.
Rachel Rogers, Psychology Professor and Director of the Center for Teaching Excellence. Hi, Shiloh Hendricks, Dean of Enrollment Management Systems and Innovation. Erin Tedisco, Coordinator of Student Engagement for Enrollment Services.
Thanks, everybody. So you can see this is a rather large implementation team, and we have been working together since the beginning of the spring semester. And what we the fall semester. And what we want to present to you today is how far we've gotten and what more needs to be done on the work that we're doing for the fall term. The only person who's missing from us today is Eileen James in the English department, who's not feeling well today, so unfortunately she wasn't able to join us for this presentation. This session is being recorded, and we're going to do a question and answer at the end. So for those people who are in the room, I'd ask you to save your questions. We might get to them in our presentation. If not, please ask them at the end of the presentation. And for those people who are online, we've got a couple of people monitoring the questions, so please feel free to either put your questions in as we go or wait until the Q&A to put your questions in. We want to make sure we can get them answered if we can. So we are going to do another one of these. I haven't told this group that yet, but we're going to do another one of these probably mid to the end of the fall semester. So to update you on what we've not accomplished quite yet, but we are going into, and what information we have about the fall semester. So please expect to hear from us again, and we hope you'll join us. More information to come about that. So I'm going to go into the presentation just so folks start to okay, there we go. And I'm going to actually get us started by talking about where this all came from and talking about why we are making this change. So the first thing you see up on the board there is the AHAC report, the Ad Hoc Assessment Committee. And to my left here in the room, I have Dr. Allison Hanley and Dean Barbara Nauman, who actually co-chaired this, so it's very nice that you're sitting together. And as you know, several recommendations came out of the AHAC. One of them was to investigate the use of shorter classes for our students. And there were some faculty who were doing that already, who were saying, we want to try to increase this. This might be a strategy that would be good. We should really look at this. As you know, the then vice president accepted all of the recommendations of AHAC, and it then got kind of rewritten into the academic master plan. So the academic master plan launched in fall of 2022. We had the Faculty Senate who endorsed the academic master plan, and one of the items in that plan is to increase our use of what we then called compressed courses. And so we were looking at the idea of scaling up our use of 7-week classes and our scheduling. From that, from the academic master plan, we formed in January of 2023 the compressed terms work group that started in the spring semester. And that group, which included some of the people that you see here, did a lot of research, a lot of learning, a lot of investigating into this model, what models were out there, talking to other schools, looking at things like what does the literature say, looking at our internal numbers. So we did a lot of investigation as a group. Out of that compressed terms work group came a set of recommendations. The spring work group recommendations were several, but I'm just going to present two to you today that are the most impactful for what we're talking about. And that is to reduce our scheduling options to 2 wherever possible, a 15-week and a 7-week, and then to scale up our use of 7-week classes together with enrollment management. There were other recommendations that came out of this around faculty development and student engagement, but I'm just going to focus on these 2 now. Those 2 recommendations were then accepted, and out of that you get the implementation team that you see in front of you now. that started working together at the beginning of the fall semester to look at what this would be to implement this for the fall of 2024. So that is the long history that's brought us here. You see it stretches back many, many years, but we're very excited to now be at the point where the fall schedule is built. We are working on many things around student engagement, around student communication, around advising, around website changes and scheduler changes. So we're hoping to share all of that with you today, but did not want to miss the history and where this all came from. Along with that, we also want to go into, for those who are either new to the school or maybe haven't heard this piece yet, why the recommendation was made to make this change. So I'm going to ask Professor Roger Hart to talk to us a little bit about this.
Great, so let's start in the kind of why make the change. Well, make the change for our students. Normally I'd be walking around, but I'll sit, and I got some notes, so I won't go too far off. I know I got a certain amount of time. So why would you change something, right? Why would you change something that we've done for a lot of years? I feel like academia is kind of solid in its ways. Well, again, this is largely student focused. We are here for them. And CCRI is not the first institution to do this. If you zoom out from CCRI, not too far, but nationally, across the United States, a significant number of institutions have already done this, and they've done this for a long time. You know, we're talking nearly a decade or more, depending on the institutional level, whether you're at a four-year school or a two-year college. So multiple institutions across the United States have done this, and in a lot of cases that we examined in the compressed terms work group in our research, that the change was focused on equity and increasing student learning outcomes and increasing student success. So with this frame of improvement and trying to kind of change a few of our institutional norms, we ended up with a nice figure there that kind of summarizes everything. So the first top left is the early momentum and increased gains. So early momentum, students start off, they're in the first week. After they successfully complete that first week, they only have 6 weeks left, right? That to me doesn't sound too bad, right? And I imagine that it doesn't sound too bad for all of you. So the second piece is they'll be able to ride that. Momentum is mass times velocity, right? They'll be able to ride that momentum all the way to complete the session. So the second piece of that, so I actually can't read it, so I apologize what it says. So I'm just going to go to the next one. Increased on and off ramps for students. I think that's pretty close. Yeah, that's good. That's pretty good. Oh, thank you. Yeah, so that's why I printed it. I knew I wasn't going to be able to read it. So this particular format allows students who may encounter some bumps along the way. So students currently have more complex lives and more challenges than ever. Just locally in our environment, students are stressed out, they have a lot of issues that they need to address, and we want them to be successful. So we want to design a system that allows them to be successful. In a 7-week system where you have 2 sessions within the academic semester, students can, maybe they missed registration because their grandma died. Right? Maybe they weren't able to register for the time for the start of the fall in September, and they needed a little bit extra time to get their affairs in order. Or they're caring for a child. So I have a child, I know what that's like. It's sometimes a pain, it's wonderful, but it takes a lot of time, right? Maybe they need that extra time to get ready. If you have 2 sessions, they're able to jump right in. Conversely, let's say their entire transmission in their car goes. A lot of our students are socioeconomically disadvantaged. A transmission job is $3,000 right now, if at a reputable mechanic. How are they going to be able to not increase their work hours and pay for that? It allows them to stop and then start back up again. So increased on and off ramps for students is important. Students who work for Care for Others, I kind of jumped into that, but again, students have extremely complex lives. We should have a system that allows them to be successful. And we should adapt to make sure that they can still meet those student learning outcomes and still be successful in their personal and professional lives. So students will be able to take fewer classes at a time. So instead of taking a course load of 15 credits, if they're 3-credit classes, that's 5 classes. Instead of taking the 5 classes at once and keeping all of those different exams, due dates, papers, quizzes, assignments, homework, Blackboard posts, 150 word for this one, 100 word for that one, all together, they only have 3 classes. Or they might want to do 2 in the first session because they know that their childcare requirements are X, but they might be able to make it a little bit more flexible in the second half. They might be able to find a sitter and they could take the 3 classes. So having students who work and care for others and other outside responsibilities, this provides them an opportunity to continue their academic career pathway. So I'm going to just go to equity up there since I'm going across the top. So students succeed in higher rates in condensed or shorter formats. We found that in the compressed term work group, evaluating the data nationally, so across the United States. And this is success that's enjoyed regardless of race, gender, Pell eligibility. Everyone succeeds when they are in these environments at higher rates than the traditional 15 weeks. In addition, the literature that we reviewed currently shows that the completion rates in these shorter sessions, like 7-week sessions, have more positive effects on underrepresented groups and the students that are most disadvantaged and students who feel potentially more excluded from the college. They enjoy more success from the 7-week or other types of condensed scheduling formats. So that's incredibly important as we move to try to think about ways our institution can advance in the globalized technological society that's the 21st century and close those equity gaps that exist. So focus on fewer classes at a time. I kind of hinted on this. I don't know about any of you, but I normally teach around 5 classes a semester. And sometimes it can be difficult as someone who's taught these classes for many years to juggle everything. So I teach across different disciplines, so I have different labs, different concepts. It's difficult for a faculty member. I can only imagine how difficult it is for a student. You know, I'm not that far from being a student. You know, it was over a decade ago, but that I sat in an undergraduate class. But I can imagine how stressful it would be, especially if you're a first-generation college student, having 5 different subjects, 5 different. Like I'm already getting stressed out to sing, right? So we want to make sure that we have a system of success so that students can hit the ground running and be successful, and we can all enjoy the celebration at graduation when they make it there. So speaking about making, to graduation, college is expensive. So in order to afford college, a lot of students require financial aid. And in order to receive financial aid, you need to have a certain level of academic success at the college. And that is deemed satisfactory academic progress. If you do not meet SAP, you're going to be in trouble. And our data shows that over 33% in the 2023 to 2024 academic year of all students enrolled that received financial aid were in violation of one of the necessary standards. Having opportunities to increase student satisfactory academic progress will not only help them complete their academic goals, it'll also help us make sure that we're really serving the students that CCRI so importantly needs to serve. Right? We got to meet our students where they're at, and we should have institutional parameters like 7-week sessions to be able to make it so students can afford to come here. Because college is not free. Maybe it'll be free someday, but it's not free now, so we need them to make sure that they're able to pay for it. So our current schedule needed revisions. There was 5-week, 7-week, 6-week, 11-week, 10-week, 15-week. I couldn't count it all in one hand. That's already too many, right? So having 7, 15, you can count it on one hand. It's reasonable. It is not a huge lift for someone to kind of conceptualize 2 7-week sessions. I've never taught a 5-week class, but I can imagine if you're having a mixed schedule as a faculty member, that would be incredibly stressful. And again, 10 times more so for the students. So we need to make sure that our scheduling system is really cognizant of who our students are. And the condensed sessions allow for that to connect more seamlessly with their complex lives. And then the last piece, I don't know if any of you have ever done an intensive workshop ever in your lives, but you learn a lot being so close in capacity with others. I've had an opportunity to do a few of my own, just outside of CCRI, short workshops that are over a weekend, and you stay over, like everybody is there, it's like you sleep, not, you don't all sleep in the same room, but you all are there in the same place. Like our Odessa trip was phenomenal, and I had an opportunity to learn from both my colleagues and others. So intensive time with faculty and students will help build a stronger sense of community, and I think that CCRI will benefit greatly for that increased sense of community in our classes. It allows faculty to get to know their students better. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but the amount of time that you spend with the students is the same, but you're with them more intensively, like every other day for longer periods of time. You get to know them. And I think that really, why I like this little clock at the end, is because the best time to do this is now. Students don't, at professional development day, you heard, I'm not going to be able to give you a whole hour presentation on it, but students don't have time to wait. The time is now for us to make these institutional changes so that we can close equity gaps, provide more seamless opportunities for students to be successful, and have more understanding, really, of students having complex lives. This is who we teach. We teach predominantly Rhode Islanders, and we should serve them. So I know I went over, so I'm sorry, but thank you for the time to try to advocate on behalf of not just our team of why we should make this change, but also our students.
Thanks very much, Roger. And I will also point out that the compressed terms work group from this time last year put together a LibGuide, which includes a written out rationale of a lot of the pieces that Roger just covered. So you can either go to libguides.ccri.edu/7week, or you can scan the QR code that you see up here. I'm also happy to share this out with anybody else who doesn't maybe have their phone on them right now. But all of the literature that we looked at, the minutes of the work group is up there, and this rationale that Roger just went through, these were our reasons for deciding to do this. And one last one that I'll add that didn't necessarily always make it through here is how many part-time students we serve at CCRI, and how important it is for part-time students to be able to just, if they can, take one class at a time, what a difference that makes to their complex lives. And so keeping in mind, yes, maybe our full-time students will continue to take a lot of 15-week courses, maybe they'll try 7, but for our part-time students, this really can be a game changer. So we're excited that we've increased our options for them, and that hopefully they'll be able to take advantage of a lot of those classes. So I'm actually going to now turn it over to Kathy, who's going to talk a lot about what we worked on mostly this past fall, which has to do about scheduling and calendars, lots of non-glamorous stuff. And so that you know, we're still to this day talking about this darn calendar, but we are going to get there. So Kathy, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you. So yeah, in preparation for the fall term registration, we decided that we would update the prerequisites, the section prerequisites, to behave as concurrencies. And what that, I'll explain what concurrencies means in a minute, but what that allows a student to do is to register for sequential courses in session 1 and session 2 without having to go and seek a permission override from the department chair. So concurrencies, we set them up so that it behaves as a prerequisite and a co-requisite. So a student can take the 2 courses in the semester, in the fall semester in this case, or they could also have the prerequisite course in their academic history. So it behaves both ways. And I have not heard of any issues of students not being able to register, so it appears to be working. So I also wanted to point out that the dates of the semester are not changing. The 7-week sessions are parts of the term within the fall term. So the start date will be the same, and the end date of the term will be the same. It's just the parts of term are broken up into 2 separate pieces. There will be a mid-session break, which will run October 23rd, the day after classes end for session 1, and it will run through October 30th, which is the day before session 2 begins. And that mid-session break is for the 7-week terms only, 7-week sessions only. Now that's something that we're going to have to really advertise to our students as well. 15-week semester and 15-week part of term will still be 15 weeks and not have the mid-semester break in there. We factored that in for the 7 weeks so that we can do our end of term processing in that week break. End of term processing is where we would process the final grades, review prerequisites, which part of term is a manual review and drop, and we also will need to re-advise students that did not pass the prerequisite course we need to re-advise them so they get in the correct courses that they need. And finally, I just wanted to point out, this is a session 1 calendar. The important dates to look at here are the beginning date, which is September 3rd, the midterm grade due date. We are having that open for a week. And that is going to be key because we're going to be looking at midterm grades to determine student success and where they might be at so that we can put students that are potentially in danger of failing on our radar so that when we get to final grades, we can process all of those things because it's going to be a short window. So the last day of class, I have that highlighted, and then also grades due by faculty. The session 1 is October 24th, and that is going to be really, really important that faculty get their grades in on time. Because again, we have all those processes that need to be run in a short span of time. And this is the same thing for the session 2 calendar, and the important dates are the class begin date, class end date, and then particularly the midterm grading dates and final grades. And this calendar will be updated and posted on the web soon. There's one up there right now, but it needs some tweaks.
That's that ongoing calendar work.
Yes.
We will get there, we will get there. So thank you very much, Kathy. And what I would like to do is now turn a little bit more to the processes that we did this past fall, working with our department chairs. And I'm going to ask Liz and Blair to talk a little bit about that. What I want to emphasize in this is that we asked department chairs to work with their faculty, to work within their department, to determine what they would like to offer. Very much individual decision by faculty who's interested in teaching these courses, followed with the discussion of which courses are appropriate for this. So there are some courses we know that will never be good for a 7-week class. And those are some things that are perhaps very high in credit, maybe in our chemistry department, or things that take a long time to, thinking of organic, that's my second chemistry example, but organic chemistry, these things need a little bit of time, 7 weeks isn't going to cut it. So there are some classes that will never be appropriate. But what we asked folks to do is to have a look at the classes that they offer and to see which ones could be offered in 7 weeks. So I'm going to ask Blair and Liz to take us through the tools that we developed for department chairs.
Thank you, Rebecca, for setting that up nicely. So with that academic calendar comes the fun part of the department chairs and departments putting together their schedules. So back in November, the assistant deans sent materials to each of their respective department chairs to help them with their fall 2024 schedule. These primary 5 items on the screen here. So these materials really were intended to be building blocks to assist the department chairs in working on the fall schedule and seeing how they can incorporate 7-week sessions within that schedule. So to start, of course, the fall 2024 7-week calendar, which Kathy just spoke to. I will note that the calendar has since changed since November, which Kathy also mentioned. So just be sure to always check the academic calendar page for updates. Second is the meeting time block. So we shared specific meeting time blocks to show how 7-week sections could actually be scheduled in both fully in-person and also hybrid course formats. And it is important to note that course formats have remained the same for the majority of students and the majority of classes, in that they will continue to meet once or twice per week over the course of that 7 weeks, as they normally do in the fall and spring semesters. And I'll turn it over to Blair.
And so, in addition, the assistant deans also sent to the department chairs sample faculty schedules. So what we did was we created sample schedules. If a full-time faculty member was only teaching 7-week sessions, what might it look like if they were teaching no overload courses? Also, what would their schedule look like if they were at the max overload capacity? We also did this with hybrid in-person classes, as well as fully in-person classes, as well as online sections. Obviously, if you're teaching online sections, though, you're not coming to campus. And then also we created these mock schedules for our typical 3-credit-hour courses, recognizing though that some classes are longer, especially classes with labs, especially in BSTEM. Liz tried creating sample schedules for classes that had labs, like biology courses, for instance. Another item that we sent to department chairs is we gave them a potential 7-week course list. And so what we did here is we looked at all courses that have been offered in a time length other than 15 weeks in the past. So these are classes that have been offered in the summer, in J-term, or as late start sections. And we said already these courses have been offered in something other than 15 weeks. So we suggest that, it might be a good idea to look at these classes or it might be easier to convert these classes into 7 weeks, given that they've already been offered in another format. And then the last item that we also sent chairs was we provided them potential program sequencing. So already for every certificate and program that exists at the college, the sequencing shows what it will look like for a student who needs to complete all 15-week sections, what they should be taking each semester in order to finish the program or certificate. So what Liz and I did was, using this potential 7-week course list, we wanted to show chairs, if you are actually changing the classes into 7 weeks, how might the sequencing change? And the reason why we did this is so that chairs could actually see from a student's perspective, does the sequence make sense? Or if you're looking at the sequence and it might be too much for students taking 15 and 7 week at the same time, maybe you might want to adjust or think about adjusting the sequence.
Thank you both. So these tools were delivered to chairs by our 2 assistant deans, which we really appreciate. It took a lot of time to develop these, and I also want to give a very big thank you to Christine Terranius-Bell, who helped a lot with the thinking through the mock faculty schedules. She's not a member of the implementation team, but kind of like in her heart she is. So she helped us think through a lot of these things as well. And I'll hand it over to Bill to talk a little bit about what that scheduling process was like once the chairs received these tools.
Thank you. Those tools were key. That gave the chairs information of what was possible. Certainly there was a process of going back to their departments and discussing with their colleagues. And I would say the overall scheduling process was built really on 2 key principles, was one of sharing information, but also that of discussion, and a discussion that was occurring at different places at different times. It wasn't purely linear in that there was oftentimes meeting, going back, let me talk with my colleagues in the department, let me come back, we'll talk again. But it did proceed, meeting with the chairs initially to point out and ask what's possible, what can we do here, what 7 weeks would work. And in that discussion with the dean and the assistant dean, it was a way of the chairs conveying pedagogically, well, it wouldn't really work for this type of course. It might work for this course. And really going back in a discussion about what was possible. Building on that information, what we were getting from the individual chairs, then we extended the discussion to incorporate enrollment management. And enrollment management had identified, along with institutional effectiveness, the top 50 high enrolled courses. Taking that list of 50, and not every department had a course in that list, but using that list, which applied to many departments, to be able to say, you have one course, you have two courses. What's possible here for those? We were really trying to maximize the impact of the 7-week schedule. And so chairs would look at that. We met over in the field house, many of those meetings at least, with enrollment management, chair, assistant dean, dean, and really having a discussion, really looking at a proposed schedule, or at least in terms of these are the courses we're thinking of. It was then divided by way of campus, so that we were looking at campuses, not just one, but rather across the board. We were also looking at modality. We're also looking at time, so that when we're thinking about 7-week scheduling, it was being done in a systematic way and asking chairs, how would that work? Now, clearly there was a way of processing that information. That discussion, which usually took about 30 minutes to 40 minutes, we would then go back, they would go back to their colleagues in their departments, share that information, and again, begin that process of saying, can we do this? What's possible? One department that we worked with in Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences said, well, this particular group of courses that we teach probably wouldn't work, but we could do probably more in this other group. And so there was that kind of looking, discussing, again, that back and forth, that idea of sharing and understanding what the needs were of each department and the faculty teaching them. Drawing upon experience, if they've taught summer courses before, very much reminding faculty. We would oftentimes go back to the tools to say, remember asking, thinking about that particular aspect, that particular element, and to say, if you taught summer school, this might be something that you would already be familiar with. And that was always, I think, a helpful reminder to the chairs. So it was a process of going back and forth, and then as we moved closer and closer to the schedule being due, we had very much a better idea of what was possible. Sometimes we exceeded what we thought, other times it wasn't quite what we hoped, but still there was participation. Thank you.
Appreciate that. And where we have ended at the end of that process that's been described by all of these folks is that about 20% of our sections this fall will be offered in 7-week format. It's a little bit under that, or maybe a little bit over that at this point. That's a good rough number for people. So looking across all of our divisions and all of our sections, about 20% will be offered in 7 weeks. And I want to pause here and just really thank our chairs, because this is not an easy thing to do. This is an incredibly, you heard, there's tools, there's analyses, there's all these things, and then there's all of the individual colleagues that you work with. This is a very difficult thing to do. The schedule is a bit of a beast, and so we are really very grateful. So much of this fell to our chairs, and there's a couple I'm having my eye on here. So we really thank our chairs for going through the hard work of trying to figure out this schedule. We really, really do appreciate it. So I appreciate all of that. I'm going to move into thinking more about student communication. So we're going to flip our focus here. And I would like to hear from Shiloh and Aaron a little bit more about what we have planned for communicating with students about this change. And then we'll move into a little bit more about student support and advising. So over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Rebecca. And I'll start out by sort of reiterating what Roger said earlier, in that our students' lives are very busy. They're juggling lots of things. And it's easy to lose information and get caught up in complex processes amongst all those things they're juggling. So it's very critical from our end that we focus our primary goal on telling students what they need to know when they need to know it. It's critical that we communicate messages and action items clearly and on time so they can take the appropriate steps and sort of keep the hard work in the classroom, and we facilitate all of the pieces that go into their arrival in the classroom. To that point, I wanted to provide you an overview of the information that our students have started to and will be receiving this semester and also moving forward. So we've put together a timeline here for you, and it really kicks off with the registration reminder. This semester, this was the first forward-facing sort of larger communication that went to students, letting them know that registration had opened. We adapted it. We added language to explain what the 7-week session is. And we also linked out a brand new landing page that provides a lot of information, and we'll look at that in another slide, but provides a lot of information available when students have lots of questions about how am I going to fit this into my life, how's it going to work, how's it going to impact my financial aid. We wanted to be able to get those answers to them right away. So that registration reminder went out on March 29th prior to the beginning of registration, so our students are aware. The next place that students will be introduced to the 7-week session communication is during the upcoming series of enrollment events, which actually kick off next Wednesday, and in their one-on-one meetings with their academic advisors. Now, whether they're attending these events in person or whether they're attending these events virtually, we will be building that communication in. And we have actually created, for those of you that are in the room, there are some right outside the door if you want to.
Actually, I brought them in because I didn't think people could see them.
Wonderful.
Maybe we can pass them around. This side of the table got them, but I love this piece, by the way. It's excellent.
Margaret did a beautiful job, and Erin was instrumental in helping us get all this information pulled and pulled together. But we wanted to provide a handout in addition to the webpage so that when you have a meeting with a student or you're having that discussion and talked about a lot of things, they can walk away with something in their hand that starts to answer those critical questions, but also share some information and experiences of students that have actually already been participating in our 7-week courses. Because remember, these aren't new to us. We have had 7-week courses, and we are now in the process of scaling them up. So we have some student history, some peer feedback that our students can rely on to go back and wonder, is this the right opportunity for me? So after that, when a student starts to move into the business of being a student and they start to actually complete their registration, they will receive a confirmation email that comes back to them. That confirmation email very clearly lists the course they've registered for and the dates and the part of term that the courses they have registered are running. They will also, a new communication that we're actually working with Tanika on building, will be a 7-week registration notification. This will be a new communication into the flow that doesn't already exist. So when the student completes a registration, if it includes a 7-week course, they will receive just a reminder email that will go out to them, letting them know that you have registered for one or more 7-week courses. Hey, here's a handy link to our FAQs and websites. Make sure to have a conversation with your student success coach if you have questions, so that we're reminding them that they've done this so they don't inadvertently register. After that, we have another one. Now this one hopefully will not go out to too many students, but we wanted to build it in, and it's a critical question that we have received a lot throughout this process of developing the 7-week sessions. A lot of people ask, what is the cap? What is the max? We don't want students taking a full semester in 7 weeks. That would be a real lot to handle on top of their already complex lives. So we have built in a alert notification that will go out to students, and I think you'll hear about that in a few more slides from AB Nazareth. But essentially, when a student registers for 10 or more credits in that session, they will receive alert, and their advisor will also receive an alert, nudging them to have that contact for an advisory conversation with the student to make sure that they are not overcommitting themselves. New student orientation, that's a wonderful place to build this in for our students coming on board. For many of them, this will be their first time experiencing college, and this, everything's new to them. So 7 weeks may not seem very new because the whole experience is new. And but our transfer students and other folks coming in or coming back may decide to participate in that as well. We will ensure that we have built this into the advising session presented at our in-person orientations, and we have also updated our online orientation for those students that are participating so they have access to that same information. Finally, the last communication that is currently existing is what we call the part of term reminder. And this is something that our records office does right now. You may know our late start semester. One of the things that came out of some of that work we've been doing for several years was when a new part of term is starting and students have already been here, we want to remind them, oh, by the way, you've got another class starting. So we have gone ahead and we're going to be, as we're switching to the 7 weeks in lieu of those late start courses, we will be sending out part of term reminders to every student so that when they get to that second part of term, that second 7-week session, they'll get a little notification to remind them they've got some work to do. Some of these communications, as I mentioned, they've been in place for some time and they're being updated. Some of these communications are new and represent sort of additional touches with the students that we're working with. Don't mind me dancing. So this is an example just so you can see our 7-week webpage. This webpage, if you don't mind scrolling down just a little bit, Rebecca, so you can see, it gives a little overview, it gives you that visual of what the schedule looks like, but then it really gets into sort of the nuts and bolts of things, and it goes into the frequently asked questions. This will continue to be a work in progress. It's really important that as our students are engaging with our faculty, with our staff, particularly with our advisors, and as Rebecca is continuing to have meetings with our advisors, as we realize more questions are coming up, they will continue to be added to this 7-week FAQ so we can make sure everybody has the information they need when they need it. At the bottom, you'll also notice we have some really great quotes, again, from our students that have already experienced 7-week courses, talking about, what was good, what it meant in their life, how it helped them, what challenges they may have incorporated and experienced as well. But we really want to make sure our students are aware, they know what they're signing up for, they understand the benefits, but they also understand what that's going to mean on their personal lives, their schedule, their time frame, their work, and all the other responsibilities that they're juggling. In addition to the current communication that is on there and listed on the webpage, we have a couple of other projects that will be coming to the webpage as we move forward. One of the things that we are currently working, Rachel is actually helping us out with some of this, is we're going to be getting some testimonial videos up on the webpage. We are currently working with some faculty that teach in the 7-week sessions to get some of their feedback and recording so they can share from a faculty perspective, what do you expect of a student? What can a student expect in your classroom for that teaching and learning experience? And also from other students. And that's sort of where we are with the communications at this point. The other thing I want to stress as we move on to the next slide is taking a look at the communication. Now, as I already mentioned, and as we all know, we've had 7-week courses for some time. This isn't new. What is new is the scale of the 7-week courses. We are growing the amount of 7-week courses to the point that we are able to now start to construct schedules in the 7-week modality if that is the right fit for a student. But we also have to ensure we have a real balance between our communication and the proportion of courses we're implementing. We don't want to over-communicate, get everybody really excited, and then all of a sudden we have no 7-week courses left. Conversely, we don't want to do the opposite and under-communicate either. So one of the things that's very important to be mindful of is that our communication plan will continue to be proportionate to our implementation. And currently, right now, we are at just about 18% of our fall schedule listed in the 7-week sessions. This is important to think about as we scale, because this communication plan, as we continue to scale, will grow. Some of the things that we're looking towards in the future are additional print media. We have ideas of posters and perhaps table tents with QR codes that lead you to the FAQ page. We want to make sure those are front and center in students when you get to that sort of critical mass of courses that are being offered in this way. Enhanced outreach through text messaging. We have some really great text messaging tools that we use. So again, when we reach sort of a more critical mass, enhancing that communication in ways that students like to receive it will be very critical for us. Finally, we're working on another project you may have heard. We're bringing on a CRM, or a constituent relationship management software, that is really going to turn into the front-end digital experience for our students as they engage with the college, from the point of prospect all the way through enrolling in that first semester. So as we continue to move toward identifying the CRM tool we will bring on and building out that communication plan, we'll scale our communications to students in an automated way to ensure that this information is getting to them in a timely fashion when they need to make decisions about it. I think that's all I have. Thank you.
I'm aware of our time, and I'm not wanting to go too much over, but you can see we just have so much to share with you that maybe we should have planned a little longer for this meeting, but hopefully you'll stick with us to the end. Before I pass it over to Amy and Tanika to talk a bit about advising, what I want to tell folks is that I've had the pleasure of meeting with our advising team, both the entire team by WebEx, and then the leadership of the teams, people from different campuses who lead our advisors at different campuses. And it's been a real wonderful opportunity for academic affairs and advising to have better communication. And so I've been really happy to hear from them, the impact that they think this has on them and their work that they do, and to share with them the things that we're planning. So it's been really terrific, and that work is going to be ongoing. Those frequently asked questions that you just saw, we're continuing to add to those as advisors are collecting them. I'm taking them, I'm getting them over to Shiloh, so we've kind of got a good flow going here with advising. I want to give it to Amy to talk a bit about how advising is going to work with students.
Sure, I will share a little bit more context on how advisors are supporting students with creating effective course schedules. And that's the full advising staff, the student success coaches, as well as the advisors. So as mentioned previously, students are encouraged to register no more than 10 credits for each 7-week session. And so, as Shiloh mentioned, a lot of that, it's so critical that they get timely messaging. And so we developed a process that will ensure that students are aware should that happen. So upon registration, if a student does register in more than 10 credits in either session 1 or session 2, they'll receive an immediate email flagging this and providing guidance. And I think what's critical is simultaneously their caseload student success coach or advisor receives the same information. And so that really provides an opportunity for the caseload advisor to reach right out to the student and provide that guidance in how they can best make a schedule adjustment and really talk about making sure that they're thinking through how they will build a schedule that will facilitate their success. Also, it's another touch point where student success coaches and advisors have that information in real time with their student advisees. Also, as previously mentioned a few times, the importance of midterm grades in this process. It really does provide, the midterm grades provide that critical indicator of how students are doing at that point in the semester. And caseload advisors and caseload student success coaches, they have that insight through reports that they receive. They are able to view the reports of their students' midterm grades, and it's very effective because any student who receives in a course, if they're receiving grades below a grade of C, they receive that outreach from their caseload advisor at that point. And again, it's another critical indicator of timely intervention and support to really guide them on how they can improve, what resources are necessary, connecting them to those resources at that point when they most need it, and also advising them for perhaps their next session that they're registered in or will be registered in. And so I think it's just important, Tanika will share a little bit more on some of the operational processes, but also, as Rebecca mentioned, there will be that ongoing assessment and communication between the advising staff, the student success coaches and advisors, and academic affairs to make sure that as possible, we are paying a lot of attention to making sure questions are answered, resources are provided, and that timely management of our processes and messaging takes place. Yes.
Tanika, I'll give it to you to talk about Starfish.
Thank you. So knowing, and Amy touched on a really good point from the kickoff on, which is the proper intervention. So we know 7-week courses, you need to get in front of these students very quickly, and Starfish is our tool for alerting students as well as their assigned advisor, how they're performing in the classroom, so we can get in front of this and help students either seek tutoring or give them the necessary advice in terms of if they're unable to be successful, what should we do next with these students? So on the slide that you're seeing right now, you will see the old version of what a course would look like when, kudo is raised or flag is raised, is only the course and the section number. I have worked with IT on this, as well as some of the communications that were mentioned in these presentations, and I do want to acknowledge, Gerald Bartone and Moses Lopez, who work very closely. They're not at this table, but they are behind the scenes making a lot of these things happen. So I do want to call, to attention the work that IT actually does with, what we're actually presenting today. And we were able to add in the SS2 that you see, just highlighted there. So advisors will be able to allocate their resources appropriately for classes in a 7-week session. These sessions that require quick turnaround time, quick intervention, advisors will be able to filter and find these classes specifically and stop there and then move up into the 15-week sessions. So this is going to be very helpful. You will notice this semester that the progress surveys will open a bit longer, and that is on purpose to allow us to capture not only full term, but what's happening in that first 7-week session. So that will continue in the fall semester to allocate that time to faculty to raise these flags or send kudos to help advisors do the work that they are tasked to do and are eagerly waiting to do that. But getting this information in a timely manner will be very helpful. And this is where Starfish comes in to help us do this work. So we have talked about a lot so far about communication, about reaching out to students in a timely manner, but we have not touched on how are students actually registering for classes and how are they aware of what they're going to be registering for, how are they going to choose this. So in College Scheduler, as we all know, which is our registration platform, students will select the term in which they plan to register for, and then we have made a change to the secondary screen that appears, which accounts for the sessions. You will notice by default in the past, all of the sessions were checked off. So the students would easily just click save and continue not paying attention that there are multiple parts of term. So we have removed that. It's no longer automatic where all the boxes are checked off. We want students to pause here and make a conscious effort in choosing the part of term they wish to register for. So I know a question has come up around the part of terms in terms of people, staff were under the impression that we will only have, the full term in the 7-week sessions, and we are seeing some 5-week, 10, and 7. So what I would do is I will lean on Kathy a bit to talk about why do we still have these additional sessions in there.
So the majority of the offerings are in 15 and 7-week parts of term. The 5 weeks that you see and the 10-week that you see, it's minimal sections in those parts of term, and those are health science courses that need to be structured that way for various reasons. So that is why you see those multiple parts of term there.
Thank you, Kathy. So as we move to the next slide, another change we have made in College Scheduler to help draw students' attention to what they are registering for is we added in the part of term on the section level of the course, and we move it to the front. We read left to right, and we wanted students to capture the most important information first, which is the part of term that they're registering for. To remind them once again, this is the part of term you're registering for. These are the dates the course will span, and then all the additional information is there around location and days and times. Again, we want students to be truly engaged with this, and we want to remind them, just in case they were to select all part of terms, if they were to go in here, we will remind them as they go through what course they're registering for, what part of term it belongs to, and the dates, the start and end dates. So that's what we have done in College Scheduler. There's always room for improvement, and Rebecca calling the meeting in the fall to regroup and look at what we can improve is a great opportunity for us to capture information and continue to make this better for our students. Turn it back to you.
Thanks very much, Tanika. So big changes to the college scheduler, and thank you, Tanika. And I also agree we don't call out our IT folks enough who are behind the scenes who are always getting these requests from us. So thanks for doing that. Snaps for them. I want to now hand it over quickly to Kelly to talk about financial aid and to hear about any changes that we are either putting into place or things that will remain the same in this model.
Thank you, Rebecca. In terms of financial aid, it's important to know that since we are still considered a semester school, our financial aid will continue to be processed on a semester basis. And the way that we'll do that is we will combine the 2 sessions within the existing semester in order to calculate a student's eligibility. So for example, if we have a Rhode Island Promise student and they are required to be a full-time student, we will look at the total credits in both session 1 and session 2, and they need to be 12 or more credits in that combination in order to achieve their full-time status. And their financial aid will be calculated and dispersed accordingly. And we also have other students that require half-time status, for example, federal student loan borrowers. So in order to achieve half-time, again, they could be 3 credits in session 1, 3 credits in session 2, but they don't technically achieve half-time status until they start their second session when they are a total of 6 credits. One thing that is a little bit different is the way that satisfactory academic progress is calculated. As Kathy mentioned, there is the 1-week break in between the 2 sessions for administrative processes. And although there will be final grades that are posted in session 1, we do not calculate a student's satisfactory academic progress until the end of the full term. So even though there may be final grades in session 1, there will be an interim GPA, if you will, but we don't look at the final GPA until the end of the full term in determining a student's satisfactory progress status. So knowing one of the FAQs that happens in terms of students, sometimes they'll see at the end of session 1, they've achieved a better GPA, they're making great progress, they think that that may immediately return them to good standing if they were previously not meeting SAP. Unfortunately, that will not open up their eligibility for session 2 because we need to see their entire progress at the end of the full semester. So those are really the primary ways in which financial aid may be affected. Or the other thing that I may mention also is we do have times of the semester where we offer bookstore authorizations. Right now, we've been doing that at the beginning of the full semester, and we've also been offering it for late start. We will be offering an additional bookstore authorization period at the beginning of the 7-week term, the second 7 weeks, so that students will have an opportunity to use their financial aid to purchase books if they're eligible in the midterm for the second session.
Thank you, Kelly. And then I'm going to, almost to wrap us up, hand it over to Rachel Rogers to tell us just a little bit about faculty professional development for 7-week classes.
Hi, everyone. We do have some faculty learning communities set up for those who will be teaching 7-week terms, those who might be teaching 7-week terms, or just anyone who wants to do some backwards design on their classes. So when we spoke to other colleges that have successfully made this transition to 6 to 8 week terms, courses, they recommended that folks go back to the big idea, the course outcomes for their course, and really think intentionally about what needs to be in the course. Backwards design is a course design strategy that supports this kind of thinking. So we are building we have built the faculty learning community around backwards design. What we really don't want to see is faculty just swooshing a 15-week course into a 7-week course with no consideration or adjustments. So the faculty learning communities will be interdisciplinary groups. This summer, they will be groups of 18 maximum, and I do want to give a major thank you to our instructional designers, Christine Terenius-Bell, for developing that faculty learning community with me. Now some numbers. Over the winter break, there was a pilot group of folks who tested out the FLC with us, and they're the ones who are some of the ones that are currently teaching 7-week classes. There are 8 folks who completed the professional development then. There are 17 folks that are currently registered in the 7-week FLC. And then as of right now, this minute, there are 71 out of 72 possible spots filled for the summer groups. Yes, very exciting. We will open up wait lists for those cohorts after that last spot is filled so that if anyone has to drop out, interested folks can still register. Let's see. Back to the winter break group. Some of the winter break cohort from the FLC will be presenting at Spring Symposium about their experiences with the 7-week classes. You can sign up for both Spring Symposium and the 7-week groups over the summer at the CTE webpage. Thank you for that free advertising. Let's see, we would like to offer more groups in the future, especially at least one group that takes place after 4 o'clock so that our part-time faculty who work during the day are able to attend. We do not have details for that yet. We are working for this to happen after July 1st because July 1st is the beginning of the next fiscal year. The details for this are dependent upon budget allocations in the new fiscal year. So I don't have any details yet about when or how many spots, but when those details are worked out, we will let the community know through the CTE newsletter, through the CTE webpage, and I will work with the department chairs to ensure that our adjunct faculty who really want to participate have a good chance to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. So I mentioned at the beginning that there are still some things this group is working on. We do not have everything completed yet. This is a work in progress, and some things will continue over the summer and even into the fall and beyond. An evaluation plan is something that's come up from a lot of places, and this makes sense. We want to make sure we build assessment into everything that we do. I have a group of faculty advisors who are working with me on building an evaluation plan that will commence at the beginning of the fall and that we will continue to follow and modify as we go. I don't have those details to share with you today, but when we have them, we'll be able to share them with you, hopefully in the fall. That week between classes needs some real clear procedures written into it. We are working on that now, but we don't have those details to share with you, and they're not that glamorous, but we'll share them anyway. Ongoing communication to those who are teaching the classes with some reminders about Starfish, with the students who are involved in them, the student commitments that many of you have heard Rachel has been leading the charge on, student, staff, and faculty commitments. Those student commitments, we're still working on finalizing those. We see that as a real big piece of what we're doing with 7-week classes. And then finally, continuing to gather student feedback. So we do have surveys and things out there to students right now, but we're continuing to gather that feedback, and we will do that as part of our evaluation plan going forward. So this is just a few things that we still have left to do. You can see it's still quite a lift, but we have accomplished quite a lot in a short period of time. So I want to thank this group and appreciate all of the hard work that they've put into this. So it's 2:03. I know I promised you 40 minutes of presentation and 20 minutes of question and answer, but we just had so much to say. We have some questions online. If people have to go, this session is being recorded and it's going to get sent back out, so you won't miss anything if you have to go. I thank you for staying as long as you have. Please do stay if you'd like, because we're going to be here. And I know Liz has some questions from online that we'll take first, and then we'll see if there's any in the room.
Sure. So I will start off, there were several that I believe were answered throughout the presentation, but if you need clarification, please feel free to reach out with further questions to us. But with that, I'll start with the first question that I think I'll direct to Kathy Tessier. Will the session 2 calendar be updated to clarify makeup days?
So as we mentioned earlier, the calendars are a work in progress. Just to give you a little background of how we developed that with the makeup days, we used the summer model where we put makeup days on Fridays. And it was brought to my attention, well, what happens with the student that's taking a Friday course or a faculty member that's teaching a Friday course in 15 weeks? How can they do the makeup? So I will be honest, and that is a work in progress. So I will address that as we can.
lot of the clinicals are scheduled on Friday also, but I know they aren't the primary group we're targeting because they're already on an accelerated.
And the fall is particularly difficult because of all of the holidays and such. Spring will probably be less problematic, I would think. But we'll have to look at that more carefully.
Thank you, Kathy. The next question I'll direct to Shiloh. What % of 7-week classes are online, hybrid, or in person?
Great question, Liz, thank you. Right now, our online courses are just over half of the current sections that are either active on the schedule or shadowed. So when I'm looking at the fall schedule, I'm thinking of all that we've built in so far, not necessarily what is yet to come, because we know that that's happening on a daily basis. We're adding things. So about 51% are online. We have about 16% are in person, and the remaining 32% are being offered in a hybrid modality.
Excellent, thank you. The next question, I think will be directed to either Tanika or Kathy. Will college scheduler prevent students from registering for a 7-week course and a Friday course so there is no conflict with the studies?
So college scheduler sits on top of Banner and is run by Banner rules. So currently Banner does not, so it will not allow conflict in the schedule, someone to register if there's a conflict. It will stop them and give them a message to adjust their choice, if that answers the question.
Yes, I believe so. The last question, unless there are more in the room, can you discuss the plan for final exams on the 7-week academic calendar? Final exams on the 7-week academic calendar.
Final exams, we discussed that the other day in our work group, and final exams is not being built into the calendar for the 7 weeks.
Correct.
Yes. Other questions in the room?
Yeah, I've got one. One toward the students and maybe toward Starfish. But I teach a college success course, and I have a lot of special needs students. And as I'm listening, and most of them I noticed are around, the 7 weeks is coming up. And we sort of, there's nobody here from Access, nobody here from disabilities that I know of.
I'm here.
Anyway, what are we doing about these kids? Some of these kids, I can see that they won't survive in the 7th week. I mean, I can, because they're very slow at doing things. And is this when they're being advised, are they just still putting these kids in, or are they gonna give a different avenue for them? I don't know, can you answer that, or we?
I can begin to
That's
answer
just
it,
something
Allison,
that-
if you don't want to.
That's just something that,
But if you wanted to chime in, you can, because Allison and I have had a few discussions about this.
So there's, every student is an adult and is allowed to choose whatever class they want, regardless. So we have to start with that. I understand your concern, for sure. The student meets with their student success coach now for the most part, to pick classes. If the student chooses to consult with our office, we may look at their disability and maybe lead them more to a 15-week course, but I don't think there's anybody putting people in classes. It's more what the student chooses. So, and they have that right. So that's
Right, no, I
so,
know they have that, right?
yeah,
That's just,
yeah.
I was just curious.
I understand your concern now. So,
Yeah.
and yes. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions that are in the room, or has anything come in from online?
Liz, if I can go back to the question you had asked, just to finish it up, I realized part of the question had asked about the makeup days. I don't believe, and Kathy can answer this, the makeup days are not built into the calendar. So you would not be accounting for that if there's any conflict in a future makeup day. So just to add that in case they wanted that answer.
Great, thank you.
One thing, just a question on the second sessions. Is there a separate drop period or anything for that? I noticed it's considered all part of the same semester, where the student doesn't show up for the second.
Each part of term has its own listing, add and drop period.
Okay.
Yeah, and that will be defined on the calendars that we posting soon.
Cool, thank you.
I have a suggestion, and maybe it's not a good one, but since I'll be departing at the end of June, you all can decide. We should add some fun and levity to this. Could we have little badges that said, I'm a 7-weeker, or ask me about 7 weeks, or something, a pin or something fun where people can feel special. I was saying, Barbara, I am not a science teacher, but at National University, we taught all the sciences in 4 weeks intensive. So, you know, I really, there are people who do this and do it extremely well. It's not for all students perhaps, but shouldn't there be something fun about, oh, I'm trying 7 weeks?
Who says learning's supposed to be fun?
Well, it's sort of, it's inbred, but as we were, this is really great, my gosh, the amount of troubleshooting and creative thinking. But shouldn't there be something that's fun where you get a little, I don't know, or a party favor or something, you know?
We're all having fun.
So,
and for faculty too, let's have a little lightness and fun.
well, I was gonna build on that, because that was like my only question or comment, is there's a 7-week break. Wouldn't this be a great time to have Path Day, to have STEM Day, to have the President's Pizza Party? Rosemary's not here, but, you know, maybe she'll want to host like an event during the week for the students as like end of some session, you know, an end of session break, and then continue that momentum of success for session 2. It could be a fun week. I'm imagining like what was done at the State House, you know, with the basket. I mean, we have all the stuff. That'd be awesome. Set up the video game on the big screen. We've done that only once, but it was great. We could do it again during that break week. Badges, swag. I think
So I'm
these are
making
great
you
ideas.
the captain of fun.
All right.
How's that?
I love that.
Go ahead.
I just have a question, and I apologize if you addressed that already. For students who are making the transition to the 7-week module, like for the first time, is there coordination with support services to kind of do extensive outreach to these students to kind of help them through, other than advising? I mean, tutoring, writing centers and math?
Sure. Well, that will be a piece of our orientation, new student orientation as well. So for students who, you know, we'll call that out so that we further explain kind of, you know, what to think about with the 7-week session and help provide that guidance. And certainly at the orientations, all of the resources and supports are presented. So that will definitely be a focus as we're developing it as it's coming up in July and August.
And something this group, I'll just add, has been talking about as well, is an orientation for students that's specific to the second 7 session. So that if we have new students coming in for the first time, that 7, that there's a specific orientation to. You're about to start a 7-week course, because that's what they'll all be starting if they're coming in. And I'll point out too, the primary reason we're making this change is because of students, but it also allows our enrollment management to better plan and have that second option of students can come in through the semester and not have to wait until. And so it's going to help with enrollment as well as we're moving through, certainly. And that's what we've seen happen in other schools as well. All right, if there are no other questions online?
Okay, sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
Tanika, this is probably for you. I like the addition of that identifier in Starfish for taking out the second part of term, or the choosing between them, versus identifying them. Is that going to apply to Blackboard as well? You know?
I do not know. Yeah.
Because having like 4 courses show up for the students and not being able to tell which ones your correct part of term might be.
I think it's good. I'm shaking my head. Yeah, I like it. We're doing it. All right, folks, I don't see any other questions. It was great to end with a fantastic suggestion. Thank you all very much for coming.
4 years ago.
Appreciate it. I appreciate this team for presenting all of their hard work, and want to thank you all and have a great weekend.
Yes, happy Friday. Yeah, we should do something fun this presentation. I mean, all of you have. We should do something Yeah, let's do it. Hey. Oh, really? Oh, yeah. I'm not sure. I mean, this is a team effort.